Nearly 800 years ago, on the vast and unforgiving steppes of Mongolia, a young man named Temujin stood at the very beginning of a journey that would one day change the course of world history. Long before he became known as Genghis Khan, the conqueror who built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen, Temujin was merely a struggling survivor in a land ruled by violence, loyalty, and betrayal. One of the most defining moments of his early life was the conflict that later became known as the Battle of the Onan River, a confrontation that did not make him victorious in the short term, but shaped him into the leader he would eventually become. The Onon River region was more than just a geographical location. It was the heartland of the Mongol tribes, a place where alliances shifted as quickly as the wind across the grasslands. This was also the land where Temujin was born and raised, where he learned to hunt, fight, and endure hardship from an early age. After the death of his father, who was poisoned by enemies, Temujin and his family were abandoned by their own tribe. This rejection forced him into poverty, hunger, and constant danger. These early struggles hardened his character and taught him that survival depended not on noble birth, but on strength, intelligence, and loyalty. As Temujin grew into a young man, he reconnected with Jamukha, his childhood friend and blood brother. At first, their bond symbolized unity and shared destiny. However, as both men matured, their visions for leadership sharply diverged. Jamukha represented the traditional Mongol aristocracy. He believed power belonged to noble families and ancient lineages. Temujin, on the other hand, believed leadership should be earned through ability, bravery, and loyalty. This ideological divide slowly turned friendship into rivalry. By around 1187, tensions between Temujin and Jamukha erupted into open conflict near the Onan River. Jamukha's commanded a far larger force, supported by powerful clans and noble families. Temujin's forces were fewer in number, many of them commoners and outcasts who believed in his promise of equality and fair reward. The clash that followed was not a single organized battle in the traditional sense, but a series of skirmishes, ambushes, and raids that reflected the chaotic nature of steppe warfare. Jamukha's numerical superiority quickly became apparent. Temujin's forces were overwhelmed, and many of his allies deserted him when they saw defeat approaching. In the end, Temujin was forced to retreat. By all conventional standards, this was a clear defeat. His army was scattered, his position weakened, and his dream of uniting the Mongol tribes seemed farther away than ever. However, the aftermath of the conflict revealed a deeper truth. Jamukha responded to his victory with extreme cruelty. He ordered brutal punishments, including executions and torture, to intimidate rival clans and maintain control. These acts of violence shocked many Mongols and planted seeds of resentment among the tribes. In contrast, Temujin's reputation for fairness, mercy, and loyalty began to grow quietly but steadily. For Temujin, the defeat at the Onon River became a powerful lesson. He understood that raw numbers alone did not guarantee lasting power. He studied his failure carefully and began to refine his leadership style. He built alliances slowly, rewarding loyalty regardless of social status. He reorganized his followers into disciplined military units and promoted commanders based on merit rather than birth. These reforms would later become the foundation of the Mongol military system. The Battle of the Onan River marked the end of Temujin's innocence and the beginning of his transformation. It was the moment when survival turned into ambition, and ambition turned into strategy. Though he lost the battle, he gained something far more valuable: insight into human nature, leadership, and power. This early defeat shaped the man who would later rise to unite all Mongol tribes under one banner. Years later, the same Temujin who fled the Onan River would return stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. He would defeat Jamukha decisively, earn the title of Genghis Khan in 1206, and launch campaigns that reshaped Asia and Europe. But none of that future greatness can be understood without this early chapter. The story of the Onan River is not a tale of failure, but the origin of a conqueror whose name would echo through history. Nearly a decade had passed since Temujin faced defeat at the Onan River. The young warrior had retreated, learned, and grown. The harsh lessons of that battle had transformed him. He understood now that leadership was more than bravery in combat. It was the careful cultivation of loyalty, the fair treatment of followers, and the organization of a disciplined, reliable army. Temujin began to systematically reform his forces. He introduced a structure based on units of 10, a system that allowed each soldier to be responsible to a small, loyal team leader. Merit, not birth, became the primary criterion for promotion. Soldiers who demonstrated courage, skill, and loyalty rose through the ranks regardless of their tribal lineage. This approach not only strengthened his army, but also attracted followers from diverse tribes who sought fairness and opportunity. Temujin also focused on strategic alliances. Understanding that strength came not only from force, but from unity, he forged pacts with tribes that had been rivals in the past. Some of these alliances were sealed through marriages, others through promises of shared spoils and mutual protection. These relationships required delicate negotiation and careful diplomacy, skills that Temujin hones through observation, patience, and a deep understanding of human nature. During these years, Temujin also prioritized intelligence and reconnaissance. Scouts and messengers were trained to gather information about rival tribes, their movements, and their plans. Temujin learned to strike with precision, choosing the right moment to engage and the right target to weaken his enemies without unnecessary loss of life. Ambushes, surprise attacks, and psychological warfare became hallmarks of his campaigns. Temujin's early campaigns following the Onan River defeat were both tactical and symbolic. They demonstrated his ability to combine force with strategy and his commitment to the principles he had adopted. Each victory, no matter how small, increased his influence and drew more warriors to his banner. Tribes that had once resisted him now saw in Temujin a leader capable of uniting the Mongols and securing prosperity and protection. By meticulously building both his army and his network of alliances, Temujin set the stage for the eventual unification of the Mongol tribes. His reforms ensured that his forces were not only loyal, but efficient and adaptable, capable of operating across the vast steppes with coordinated precision. The lessons of the Onan River were evident in every decision he made. Fairness, discipline, and strategic thinking were now the foundations of his growing power. As Temujin's reputation expanded, so did his ambitions. He envisioned the unified Mongol nation, one that could rise above the traditional rivalries and conflicts that had plagued the steppes for generations. The path was still fraught with danger, but each reform, each alliance, and each victory brought him closer to the destiny that awaited. The young boy who had once fled in defeat was transforming into the leader the world would come to know as Genghis Khan, a man whose vision, strategy, and indomitable will would reshape the course of history forever. With the Mongol tribes gradually uniting under his leadership, Temujin began the next phase of his transformation from a tribal leader into a formidable conqueror. The lessons of the Onan River and his careful reforms now enabled him to wage campaigns that were both strategic and decisive. He approached each neighboring tribe with a clear understanding of both military tactics and the complex social dynamics that governed loyalty on the steppes. Temujin's campaigns were marked by remarkable discipline and precision. Scouts were dispatched to gather intelligence on enemy positions, strengths, and weaknesses. He employed strategies that combined rapid cavalry maneuvers with coordinated attacks, often striking before his opponents could fully prepare. This approach not only minimized unnecessary casualties among his own forces, but also created a reputation for efficiency and unpredictability that would precede his army across the steppes. One of Temujin's key innovations was the implementation of strict military codes and regulations. Every soldier knew his role, responsibilities, and the consequences of failure or disobedience. Loyalty to the commander, rather than to a particular clan or family, became the guiding principle of the Mongol forces. This structure allowed him to integrate warriors from different tribes into a single, cohesive army, strengthening both discipline and morale. Temujin's leadership was also deeply personal. He led by example, sharing the hardships of his men and demonstrating courage and skill on the battlefield. This earned him respect and devotion that went beyond the ordinary allegiance of soldiers to their chief. The combination of fairness, strategic brilliance, and personal valor created a magnetic leadership style that drew more followers and solidified his growing power. As his influence expanded, Temujin did not rely solely on force. He understood the value of diplomacy, alliances, and the subtle use of fear. Tribes that resisted could expect swift and decisive action, but those who submitted peacefully were often integrated into his growing empire with favorable terms. This dual approach, combining strength with pragmatic negotiation, allowed him to expand rapidly without exhausting his forces or alienating potential allies. During this period, Temujin also began to establish a system of communication and intelligence that was unprecedented for nomadic societies. Mounted couriers could relay messages across vast distances in days, ensuring that orders from the commander reached even the most remote units. This network not only enhanced military coordination, but also strengthened the cohesion of the empire in waiting. Through these early campaigns, Temujin's vision of a unified Mongol nation began to materialize. He was no longer merely a tribal leader. He was a strategist, a reformer, and a symbol of emerging Mongol identity. Each victory reinforced his reputation and attracted further support, laying the groundwork for the conquest of neighboring regions and the eventual creation of the largest contiguous empire in history. The transformation of Temujin during this period illustrates the interplay between experience, reform, and leadership. From a boy who had fled in defeat, he became a commander capable of inspiring unwavering loyalty, executing complex military operations, and envisioning a unified empire. The foundations he built during these years would define the Mongol conquests that reshaped the political and cultural landscape of Asia and beyond. Every step, every campaign, and every strategic decision during this period contributed to the emergence of Genghis Khan, the man whose ambition, skill, and vision would leave an indelible mark on world history. With the Mongol tribes united under his command, Genghis Khan turned his attention to the wider world beyond the steppe. Central Asia, with its fragmented city-states, wealthy trade routes, and rival tribes, presented both an opportunity and a challenge. Genghis Khan approached each campaign with meticulous planning, understanding that victory depended as much on intelligence and strategy as on brute force. His first major campaigns were marked by rapid, coordinated movements of cavalry that overwhelmed opponents before they could organize effective defenses. He employed psychological tactics, using fear to weaken resistance and encourage submission. Cities that resisted faced devastating consequences, while those that yielded quickly were often spared and incorporated into his growing network of influence. This dual approach allowed him to expand territory efficiently while conserving his own forces. On the battlefield, Genghis Khan demonstrated an extraordinary ability to adapt to changing circumstances. He monitored enemy movements closely, used scouts for reconnaissance, and employed deception to lure opponents into traps. His leadership was hands-on. He often rode with his troops, leading charges, and personally directing complex maneuvers. Soldiers respected him not only for his strategic brilliance, but also for his willingness to share their hardships. During these campaigns, he also refined the organization of his army. Units were grouped into tens, hundreds, and thousands, each with clear responsibilities and loyalty to the commander, rather than to a particular clan. Communication networks ensured that orders reached even the most distant units with speed and accuracy. This level of coordination was unprecedented for nomadic forces and allowed Genghis Khan to conduct simultaneous operations across vast distances. Central Asia's cities, from Bukhara to Samarkand, fell one by one to his forces. He leveraged both siege tactics and mobility, adapting strategies based on the terrain, the strength of fortifications, and the political circumstances of each region. His victories created a reputation that preceded him. Traders, travelers, and rival leaders all spoke of a formidable leader whose army struck with precision and relentlessness. Yet Genghis Khan balanced ruthlessness with pragmatism. He integrated skilled artisans, administrators, and local leaders into his empire, ensuring stability and continuity. Those who submitted peacefully were often rewarded, while rebellious factions faced swift punishment. This system not only expanded his territory, but also strengthened the loyalty and efficiency of his administration. By consolidating control over key regions of Central Asia, Genghis Khan laid the foundation for the vast empire that would stretch from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. Each battle and campaign served a dual purpose, expanding the empire and reinforcing his authority as a leader whose vision, discipline, and personal strategic foresight were unmatched. The campaigns of this period exemplify the transformation of Genghis Khan from a tribal leader into a world-class strategist and conqueror. His ability to combine military innovation, political acumen, and personal charisma allowed him to unify disparate tribes, subdue powerful cities, and create the framework for an empire that would endure long after his death. The reputation he built during these years ensured that he was not only feared, but also respected, setting the stage for the legendary conquests that would follow. As Genghis Khan's empire expanded beyond Central Asia, his campaigns reached into Persia, the steppes of Russia, and the kingdoms of Eastern Europe. Each new territory presented unique challenges, from fortified cities to unfamiliar terrain and culturally diverse populations. Yet, the strategies and reforms that had served him so well on the Mongolian steppe proved adaptable and effective across these varied regions. In Persia, Genghis Khan faced a patchwork of city-states and local rulers, many of whom resisted fiercely. Utilizing a combination of speed, intelligence, and psychological tactics, he dismantled defenses systematically. Cities that surrendered peacefully were spared, integrated into his growing empire, and sometimes allowed local leaders to maintain positions of authority under Mongol oversight. Those who resisted faced overwhelming force, demonstrating the consequences of defiance. Further west, in the Russian steppes, Genghis Khan's armies encountered formidable opposition in the form of fortified towns and mobile cavalry forces. Here again, his organizational innovations proved decisive. Units operated cohesively, communication lines ensured coordination over vast distances, and intelligence networks provided insight into enemy movements. His personal leadership, riding with his men, assessing situations firsthand, and making swift strategic decisions, reinforced the loyalty and effectiveness of his army. Throughout these campaigns, Genghis Khan balanced ruthlessness with pragmatism. He incorporated conquered peoples into his administration, valuing skills and expertise over ethnicity or previous allegiance. Traders, artisans, and local leaders who cooperated were rewarded, fostering stability and economic growth within newly acquired territories. This approach allowed the Mongol Empire not only to expand rapidly, but also to function efficiently over vast and diverse regions. The reputation of Genghis Khan spread ahead of his armies. Tales of his fairness to those who submitted, his strategic genius, and his unyielding discipline inspired both fear and respect. This psychological impact often led adversaries to surrender without a fight, further accelerating the expansion of his empire and minimizing unnecessary bloodshed. As he consolidated control over these extensive territories, Genghis Khan established laws, administrative structures, and systems of communication that would endure long after his death. The decimal-based organization of his military, the meritocratic promotion system, and the network of couriers and scouts became standard practice throughout the empire, ensuring cohesion and rapid response capability across thousands of miles. Genghis Khan's leadership philosophy combined vision, discipline, and an acute understanding of human behavior. He recognized that loyalty could not be bought with fear alone. It required respect, fairness, and the promise of shared success. By empowering capable individuals, rewarding merit, and maintaining strict order, he created an empire that was both formidable and resilient. In the final years of his life, Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, encompassing millions of people and countless tribes under a single unifying authority. The groundwork he laid in military organization, governance, and diplomacy ensured that the Mongol Empire would continue to thrive under his successors, shaping the course of Eurasian history for centuries. The story of Genghis Khan, from the struggles of his youth through the lessons of the Onan River and the unification of the Mongol tribes, to his expansive conquests and the creation of an unprecedented empire, illustrates the power of vision, strategy, and relentless determination. His legacy is not merely of conquest, but of leadership, innovation, and the profound impact that a single individual can have on the world. With the completion of these campaigns and the establishment of a lasting empire, the narrative of Genghis Khan reaches its culmination. From the boy who fled in defeat to the ruler whose influence spanned continents, every battle, reform, and strategic decision contributed to a legacy that endures in history, illustrating the extraordinary journey of a man who reshaped the world and whose story continues to inspire awe and study to this day.